3,000 years. Dozens of pharaohs. Hundreds of campaigns from the scorched cataracts of Nubia to the deserts of Syria. The Egyptian army was one of the most powerful fighting forces the ancient world ever produced. And at the top of it sat a man so powerful he was legally considered a god. This is every rank in that army, starting at the very bottom. Level 1. Recruit. The officer didn't ask your name. He looked at your hands, checked your teeth like you were a horse, and pointed you toward the barracks. That was a month ago, and the sun has only gotten more personal. Every morning before dawn, you run. You don't have weapons yet. Instead, you carry a heavy cedar log across your shoulders until your collarbones feel like they're about to snap. 5 miles through sand that shifts under your feet. When you stop running, you wrestle. When you stop wrestling, you practice formations until your legs go numb. Step, lock, step, lock, step. The officer walks behind the line, cracking a stick across the back of anyone who breaks rhythm. He hasn't learned your name either. You're starting to think that's intentional. You eat bread and onions. You sleep on a reed mat in a room with 20 other men that smells like a river that something died in. Back home, your father told you the army meant land. 20 years of service and Pharaoh grants you a farm in the Delta, a house, a life. He was right. He just forgot to mention what 20 years actually looks like from the inside. You still haven't held a spear. You've been here 5 weeks. Level 2. Common Soldier. Infantry. You have a spear now. A bronze-tipped spear, a shield of oxhide stretched over a wooden frame, and a short curved blade on your hip that you haven't used on anything except a training post. You are one of 10,000. A single grain of sand in a very large, very hot desert. The marches define your life. 20 miles a day through rock and heat and sand that gets into everything. Your food, your sandals, the corner of your eye. Your water ration is 2 clay jars a day. And by noon, one of them is already gone and you're doing quiet math about how bad the next 4 hours are going to be. You've been in one real battle. A skirmish on the Libyan border, over in less than an hour. You held the line, kept your shield up, and screamed when everyone else screamed. The man to your left went down at some point. After the battle, you watched the scribes tallying the dead by hacking off the right hands of the fallen enemies and piling them into a mountain of flesh. You didn't look for your friend in that pile. You didn't want to find him. At night, you sit by the fire with Nebo and Ka, 2 men from your village who signed up the same week. You talk about the river flooding back home, the harvest, whether Ka's sister got married yet. Small things. The kind of talk that keeps the big things from getting too loud. You are 2 years in, 18 left. Level 3. Scout. You volunteered for this. The men in your unit thought you'd lost your mind. After 2 weeks alone in the desert, you're starting to wonder if they had a point. You move ahead of the main column by half a day, alone or in pairs, with nothing but a short bow, a knife, and whatever water you can carry. No formation out here, no shield wall, no 1,000 men to disappear into. Just you and the ground, and whatever the ground is trying to tell you. A footprint pressed deeper on one side. A loaded man, moving fast. A dead fire cold enough that whoever built it left before dawn. Vultures circling 3 miles east, dropping lower than they should be for something that died naturally. You read all of it, work out what it means, and move. The pay is identical to the infantry. The odds are considerably worse. But you cannot go back to standing in a line breathing another man's dust for 20 miles. You'd rather be thirsty and alone on a ridgeline than safe and suffocating in formation. Last month, you found a 40-man ambush waiting in a ravine before the column walked into it. You slipped back through the dark, reported it, and spent the next morning watching officers accept congratulations for the warning. They didn't mention where it came from. You don't care. You already knew. Level 4. Chariot crew. Driver. You are not the fighter. It took you longer than you'd like to admit to make peace with that. The archer stands behind you in the chariot basket. He holds the bow, looses the arrows, and gets his name carved on things after battles. You hold the reins of 2 horses that weigh nearly a ton between them and have absolutely no interest in maintaining a consistent heading when metal starts flying. Your job is to keep the platform stable, find the angle, get the archer into range, and then get both of you out alive. All while the ground is uneven, the enemy is shooting back, and your horses are doing their best impression of a controlled disaster. What people don't see: the 2 years you spent learning that your lead horse flinches hard at sudden noise on his left, that the other drifts wide without constant pressure on the right rein, that there's a soft sand shelf along the eastern flank of the garrison training ground that will drop your wheel into a rut if you take the turn too fast. In battle, you're not thinking about the enemy. You're thinking about the ground 15 feet ahead. After the last campaign, the songs were all about the archer. He slew 20 men, they said, on your wheels, with your hands on the reins the whole time. You cleaned the chariot, fed the horses, and went to sleep. Some battles you don't fight with weapons. Level 5. Chariot Archer. Now the songs are about you. You've decided you deserve them. 50 arrows a day from a moving chariot at a target 40 meters out, and then 50 more. Your draw arm is visibly larger than your other one, and at this point, you consider it a personality trait. The bow is composite. Wood, horn, sinew, built to last and punishing to draw. You've stopped noticing. You just shoot. In battle, you are the precision edge of the Egyptian army. The infantry holds the enemy line in place. Grinding, brutal, anonymous work, and you ride the flanks at speed, loosing arrows into men who can't reach you, watching formations come apart. Pharaoh's temple walls are covered in reliefs of chariot archers winning his wars. You've seen your own division carved in stone. The face is generic, the way all the carved faces are, but you know it's you. You fought 4 campaigns. You have a deferred promise of a plot of land near Memphis. You see your family 3 months a year when the army isn't moving. Your son is 7. He runs around the yard with a stick pretending it's a bow. You've stopped trying to talk him out of it. Level 6. Standard Bearer. You carry the pole, the great animal-headed standard of your division, topped with carved wood and hammered gold that catches the desert sun like a torch. The men can see it from 300 meters. Where it goes, they go. If it falls, something in them falls with it. It can't fall. That's the whole job, stated simply. You've also become, through no particular plan, the person who knows everything. Which unit is where, which supply cart is running low, which officer is furious, and which one is too exhausted to be furious. Men come to you because you always seem to know what's happening. Half the time you actually do. In the last engagement, a soldier from the opposing line got within 10 feet of you. Standard bearers don't break formation to fight. You broke it anyway. One strike with the butt of the pole, hard enough to drop him, and you were back in position before anyone senior looked your way. The men saw it. They haven't said a word. They just hold eye contact a beat longer when they pass. That's enough. You can't enlist in the ancient Egyptian army, but today's sponsor gets you surprisingly close. Total War. Pharaoh puts you in command of Bronze Age armies across Egypt, the Hittite Empire, and the kingdoms of Canaan, with real-time chariot charges, flanking maneuvers, and unit formations. The campaign layer goes deep. Trade, dynastic politics, succession crises, and the full chaos of the Sea People's invasion. Download it free using the link in my description. Thanks to Total War, Pharaoh for sponsoring. Now back to the ranks. Level 7. Troop Commander. 50 men. Their problems are now your problems, which turns out to be a significantly larger category than you anticipated. You know every one of them by name and by habit. Who freezes when the line makes contact, who charges too far forward, who hasn't slept since the last crossing. You know that Hori will lose equipment during any river crossing, and that Amenhotep has been in 3 separate fights with men from other units, each one allegedly started by the other guy, which is statistically improbable. When he gets into a 4th fight, you're the one standing in front of the senior officer, explaining why it's somehow still the other man's fault. You get surprisingly good at this. In battle, your job is invisible. The glory goes to the men who push forward. You maintain the shape behind them, watching for gaps, plugging them, screaming at men to hold when every instinct says run. If you do it right, nobody notices. If you do it wrong, 50 men find out very quickly. Last month you lost 4 men in a coastal raid. 3 days later, 4 replacements arrived. New faces who didn't know the ground, didn't know the unit. You started their training before sunrise. There's no ceremony for this part. You just start again. Level 8. Medjay. You're not like the conscripts. You were never a conscript. You came from the eastern desert, from a people who read terrain across landscapes that would kill a delta farmer in 2 days. The army recruited you specifically for work. It doesn't announce at victory banquets. Raids behind enemy lines, tracking deserters, moving through occupied territory before any official column arrives. When the mission calls for someone who won't ask too many questions, they send for you. You carry a heavier bow than the infantry and a long knife. No formation, no shield wall. You move fast, often at night. And you've learned that the most dangerous place to be is anywhere between arm's reach and arrow range, so you stay outside both. The regular soldiers are wary of you. You've heard them whisper, outsider, not quite one of them. They're wrong about the loyalty. They're right that you're different. You're not here for the land grant. This is simply what you are. Level 9. Division Officer. You grew up in a scribal household, which means you learned military theory from papyrus scrolls long before you touched a weapon. The soldiers can feel this. The way you hold a spear is slightly wrong in a way that's impossible to miss. The senior men quietly correct your mistakes before anyone above you notices. They've done this before with officers like you. They understand how the system works even if you're still catching up. What you actually know is logistics, supply counts, march scheduling, ration distribution, the 1,000 details that keep 5,000 men fed and moving. You draft the orders that commanders sign without reading. You know precisely how many water jars it takes to move an infantry column 200 miles in the dry season. Less glamorous than a battle scar, keeps more men alive. A veteran named Nebo, 40 years old, 20 in the army, stepped in front of an arrow during the last engagement that had your name on it. He didn't think about it, just moved. The way men who've done this long enough move when it counts. You put him in for a commendation the next morning. He seemed embarrassed. You weren't. Level 10, Overseer of Troops. 3 divisions answer to you. 15,000 men. You no longer see people when you look at a muster report. You see weight, speed, water requirements, the arithmetic of keeping a large column alive across bad terrain. The nature of the war has changed. When you were young, campaigns had edges. March to a border, fight the thing at the border, come home. Now the fighting is continuous from every direction. The Hittites pressing from the north, Libyan incursions that have stopped being seasonal, the sea peoples arriving on the coastline in numbers that no longer look like raiding parties. Pharaoh is fighting 3 wars at once. You keep the supply lines open for all 3, without any of them knowing how close the margins are. You sleep in short stretches. Your shoulder hasn't healed in 2 years. You see your wife at the major festivals when the campaign schedule allows, which it increasingly does not. The junior officers study you the way you once studied the men above you. You remember thinking this view would finally make things clear. The fog doesn't lift. It just moves higher. Level 11. General. Army Commander. Pharaoh gave you the gold collar of honor and had your titles carved into stone before you'd won the battle they were already celebrating. You stood in the ceremony, said the right things, and went back to a room full of maps and problems the ceremony had done nothing to solve. Command at this level means making decisions with half the information you need under a pharaoh 300 miles away, whose advisors are reporting conditions that were accurate in spring and are now completely wrong. The water source you built the northern advance around has dried up. The auxiliary forces you were counting on are refusing to march until a pay dispute gets resolved. You are operating on educated guesswork dressed up as strategy. 4 major victories behind you. Your name on temple walls. Last month you executed a soldier for breaking during a night engagement. 19 years old, first real fight, terrified the way anyone would be. You did it because an army that sees its commander hesitate on discipline starts to wonder what else he'll hesitate about. You don't talk about that. But when the camp goes quiet, you think about it more than any of the victories. Level 12. The Vizier. You haven't been in the field in 3 years. Some mornings you almost miss it. The simplicity of a battle. How it reduces everything to the immediate. And then you remember the shoulder and the 3-hour sleep, and the feeling passes. You sit beside Pharaoh in the war council, not behind him, beside him. Every garrison, every army, every fortification from the northern coast to the deep south runs through your authority. 200,000 soldiers. It all answers to you, at least on paper. And paper is mostly what this level of power runs on. The enemies here don't carry weapons. There's the court official who smiles at you across the banquet hall while corresponding with Pharaoh about your last campaign decision. The treasury administrator who has decided military spending is philosophically his concern. The 3 men you moved past to reach this seat, one exiled to a distant posting, one gone in circumstances you chose not to examine, and one still here in the palace, still smiling, still writing letters. You watch him the way you once watched enemy flanks, tracking the angle, reading the timing, waiting for the moment he overextends. You've been waiting 2 years. You're a patient man. Level 13. Regent. Pharaoh is 11 years old. He sits on the throne with the crook and flail in hands too small for them. The crown leans to the left if the priests don't adjust it before every appearance. He reads the words they prepare, signs the documents placed before him, and looks to you whenever something requires an actual decision, which is constantly, because he is 11, and the decisions are about armies and droughts and whether to go to war again. You are not formally the regent. When foreign emissaries arrive, though, their eyes go to you first and to the boy on the throne second, and some of them have stopped pretending otherwise. Everyone in this palace is doing the same calculation, measuring the distance between where you stand and where the boy sits. You've been doing it too, longer than you'll admit to anyone. Last week the boy king walked with you in the garden at dusk, away from the priests and the courtiers, and asked why his father's advisors had all gone away. He asked it carefully, the way someone asks a question they've been thinking about for a long time. You told him they'd been reassigned where their skills were needed. He looked at you steadily. He is 11, but there is something behind his eyes considerably older than 11. You smiled and told him Egypt was at peace. For now, that's still true. Level 14. Pharaoh. You didn't inherit this. You took it, and there is no version of the story where that distinction disappears. The old reign was rotting, weak court, a military that had stopped winning, borders contracting in ways the official records weren't allowed to describe. The army was already loyal to you before you made the decision, built through 30 years of trust that only comes from men who've watched you make the hard call without flinching. When the moment arrived, you stood in your tent for a long time before walking outside. Walking outside meant it was done. You walked outside anyway. Now the priests say you are divine, not as a metaphor, literally. The son of the sun, the living embodiment of cosmic order, made flesh so that Egypt holds together. Soldiers chant it when you pass. You've been hearing it long enough that some mornings you almost believe it, which you've decided is probably the most dangerous thing that can happen to a man. The power is real. You move armies with a sentence. You've built monuments that will outlast everyone alive. There are moments, at the head of a column, watching the Nile catch the light from the palace window, where you understand completely why men have always wanted this. And then you go back to the inner room where your food is tasted before it reaches you, where guards stand inside the sleeping chamber because the last pharaoh who only had outside guards is the reason that policy now exists. You have not walked truly alone in over a decade. Somewhere in this palace tonight, someone is doing the calculations you did 30 years ago, counting loyalties, measuring the gap, watching the army. You know this because you would do exactly the same. You were that person. You know how he thinks. The Nile is dark below the window, slow and vast, older than every pharaoh laid end to end across 3,000 years. It will still come after you, when you are a painted face on a tomb wall, a name scribe's copy without knowing the man behind it. The river doesn't care who wears the crown. You turn back to the maps.